So you run into an old friend at a coffee shop. You start to catch up and reminisce on all those wild adventures and jaunts in grade school. And you start to ask each other the important questions. How many kids do you have these days? What do you do in your free time? Whatever happened to that old flame of yours? And then the conversation progresses and you start talking about deeper things. Like, what is CUI? You then explain to your friend that CUI is a lot like high school you. Often misrepresented, mislabeled, and misunderstood. But specifically Controlled Unclassified Information, otherwise known as CUI, or CUI as the kids say these days, is an umbrella term that encompasses all cover defense information, CDI, and controlled technical information, CTI. These three markings are given to unclassified content that must be protected in a very specific manner, both within and outside a government information system. In general, CUI is information marked or identified in a government contract or provided to a government contractor by the DoD in connection with a contract. However, it can also be content that is developed by the contractor during the performance of a contract. This content is marked or identified by the DoD as requiring safeguarding or specific dissemination controls. And, well, you get long-winded and you continue, and you start to explain that certain regulations and laws are in place to protect CUI and other data types like FCI, which you can find that thrilling video in the description below on what that acronym means. Well, so the National Archives and Records Administration, known as NARA, created certain definitions and standards for CUI. The National Institute of Standards and Technology, NIST, established certain cybersecurity requirements for systems containing CUI. And then here comes CMMC. CMMC comes along to further establish and enforce those requirements for DoD contractors. There's also a CUI registry that includes dozens of categories and roughly 100 subcategories of CUI. Real exciting stuff. You then tell your friend it essentially boils down to these 5 things. CUI Basic contains the baseline handling and dissemination controls as identified in the final rule issued by NARA. FISMA, or the Federal Information Systems Modernization Act, requires that CUI Basic be protected at the FISMA moderate level and can be marked as either CUI or controlled. That's CUI Basic. Then you have CUI Specified. CUI Specified is a subset of CUI where the authorizing law, policy, or regulation puts more restrictive controls on the handling and the control of CUI specified content. The underlying authority maintains the handling controls on CUI specified content, and only a designating agency may apply the limited dissemination controls to CUI content. Now, thirdly, organizations must have a system security plan, an SSP, and a plan of action milestone, otherwise known as a POAM. Fourth, companies must implement NIST 800-171 and likely CMMC Level 3 practices within the organization and on the information systems containing CUI. And then last but not least, they're going to need to complete a basic assessment and submit that assessment into the Supplier Performance Risk Assessment System, otherwise known as SPRS. And that, you tell your friend, is what CUI is. You share some final words and talk about how great it was to bump into each other, that you hope to see each other around, and then you finally part ways. Well, you finally part ways. Your friend then leaves with a deep understanding of CUI and an even deeper regret for asking you what CUI is.
Order for Cooey?